speaker is Jussara Korngold, founder and coordinator of the Spiritist group of New York, located in Manhattan, New York. And Jussara will talk to us about the Spiritist Center Preventing Suicide. We are pleased to welcome our friend Jussara Korngold.
As you can see, I have been assigned two difficult tasks. First one to talk after lunch, and second one to talk about suicide, which is never an easy topic for us to talk about. But I'll try to present it in a lighter form as possible. Mainly because when we are talking about suicide, and when we think about situations that may have led us to think or to consider suicide in our lives, when we have a Spiritist knowledge, a Spiritist understanding, one of the first things that we learn is that, above all, Spiritism is a prayer to life. Is value life, is an ode to life in each and every sense. Always explaining to us why life is so important, regardless of the situations that we live. I was in contact with suicide when I was about 12 years old. I lost a friend that was a colleague of mine at school. And it was very difficult to understand why a 12-year-old is going to think about or actually commit suicide. It was a trauma that, of course, later on stayed in the back of my mind, but it was always something that was very present, and understanding that Spiritism is above all the promised counselor, comforter. I thought later on, how could I somehow bring some comfort, some consolation to people that have lost their loved ones through suicide, or even to give some explanations for those who are considering suicide. So it was when the idea of writing this book, Those Left Behind, came to my mind to give some explanation, some comfort from the Spiritist perspective. So we are going to be talking about it a little bit during this presentation. Of course, everything starts for us understanding in terms of Spiritism with the Spirit's book. If the people, do people have the right to take their own life? No, only God has that right. Therefore, suicide is an act of extreme rebelliousness to the will of God. Those are words of Emmanuel. So, the Spiritist book explained to us that we have no right over our lives. Of course, if we don't have the right to kill ourselves, much less when we are talking about other forms of killing, but talking about us personally. In this sense, when we have just the material understanding of life, it's very difficult for us to understand why can I not dispose of my own life. It's my own life. So, in this sense, we understand that the reasons that may lead us to contemplate the idea of suicide will be incredulity, materialism, and doubts about spiritual life. And of course, all of that combined in more weaknesses before deceptions and sufferings. The Spirit Joanna de Angelis tells us that the cause of all evils that are present in the world today is due to the absence of a more spiritual vision of life. So, We learn from Spiritism that we live in a world of trials, tests, and atonements. We are all talking about the great transition, and we are part of this great transition, but we are not there yet. We are still having or going through the need of facing difficulties, challenges, for whatever reason they will come to us. Most of all, we learn from Spiritism that nothing happens to us by chance. And if we are going through situations that we may qualify as being good or bad, it is because it's exactly that we need to go through in order to go through this process of education that Mara has presented to us so well. Before adversities of life, we look at it as an educational process. Of course, this is not easy. We are speaking here in theory. When it comes to the point that we really have to face it, the problems, sometimes it's just too much. Sometimes we go to the point of despair. We do not know what to do. We do not know to whom to talk to, where to go, and we may actually do silly things, commit silly things. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I remember that the first thought that crossed my mind was just go and jump out of the window. It's not an easy thing for you to face. But I didn't. I'm not talking to you here as a spirit. So we are not saying that it's easy, that we are not going to have thoughts of giving up. But then it's very important for us to have here what Joanna de Angelis is teaching us, understanding about the spiritual side of life. Putting aside incredulity, lack of faith, materialism, and try to understand why we are going through those situations and what kind of experiences, wisdom, education, and spiritual growth they are going to bring to our lives. Suicide in this country and all over the world, and actually, I have to tell you something. This is not my favorite topic to talk about. Sometimes I even regret having written this book, because of course, since I have the book, many people say, please come and talk about the book, come and talk about suicide, that I researched so much. But it's a very difficult to talk about it, but it's one of the topics that people mostly ask me to talk about all over the world. As important as it is in the present situation of our world. So today we have here in the US some of these statistics. People commit suicide every 40 seconds. 11 leading cause of death in the US. 7 leading cause of death for males and 16 for females. 36,000 suicides, just the latest record we have is 2009. A suicide rate of 12 per 100,000. For every successful suicide, there are 25 attempted suicides. The estimated number of survivors in the US is 4.5 million people. One of every 65 Americans have tried to commit suicide. It's astonishing numbers, right? Each suicide affects at least 6 other people. And in this case, it's very important for us to think that when people are exposed to suicide somehow, the percentage of those people, the 6 people that are closest to the person, to commit suicide against at some point of their lives increases immensely. But when I talk about that, if with negative actions we impact 6 people at least, with positive ones we also impact 6 people. So it's always good to keep that in mind as well, that in the same way that our negative actions can impact others, our positive actions as well. But it's always something for us to keep in mind. And we will see, recently we have a friend in the Spiritist Council, International Spiritist Council, that she lost her nephew to suicide, whose father had committed suicide years ago. So it's actually something that we have to think about. Highest rates are among the divorced, separated, and widowed. Lowest among the married one. And this one I always find it intriguing. And it's the one that I love it most. Because you know how married people tend to say, to complain about their married lives? My spouse, the this or that is difficult. Sometimes my life is a hell. Well, if it was really a hell, they were going to be in the highest category of committing suicide. They are in the lowest category. So that's a good thing. Go get married, okay? For those who are single, it's a good recommendation against suicide. Age, as you can see, according to the age, the number increases. And it's very sad to see here that over 85, it's the highest percentage that we have, that exactly reflects the lack of a spiritual vision. It comes to a point that another person thinks, I'm going downhill, my health is deteriorating, there is nothing in the world that I can accomplish, I better, just be the owner of the decision when it's time for me to leave this earth. So we see how important it is to have this understanding of a spiritual life. Among teens is also a very difficult problem, because they have a more sometimes romantic vision of life. Everything assumes a huge proportion, had a fight with a friend, with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and so they cannot take that much responsibility. And so feeling hopeless, another thing that an adult has the tendency to do sometimes when we are dealing with children and teenagers regarding their personal problems, is to take it for granted and say, no, this is not a problem. Wait until you become an adult, then you will see what is a problem. And we are not respecting their age, their maturity, their spiritual growth. We're just saying, no, your problem is not a problem. So we are underestimating the emotions that they are having. And we can never do that, either for a child, a teenager, or an adult. But for sure, this is something that we have a tendency to do. So they do not find a way to come and to talk to adults, because they will say, no, a problem is not having a job. A problem is having a serious illnesses. A problem is, not having enough money to pay for the rent. You having a problem with bullying at school is not a problem. Having a fight with your girlfriend is not a problem. And these are the reasons they commit suicide. And we are not listening to them. And we are not talking to them. And there is a taboo of talking about suicide with children and teenagers, thinking somehow that if we don't talk to them about it, they will not contemplate it, they will not do it. And with lack of knowledge, ignorance concerning suicide is when they actually may decide it or may do something like that. Of course, alcohol, drugs that can alter their judgment, and having access to guns in their house is extremely risky. So they go through a lot of uncertainty. They are growing up. I remember that my son, I think he was young, he always had like his physiology was almost always like 2 years in advance to his age. So when he was 8 years old, he already had teeth of a 10-year-old or 12-year-old. And so he became a teenager very early. So at 11, he was already like a full-grown teenager. And his colleagues at school were not. And he was having problem, and he came to me once that he was having problem at gym because he didn't want to wear shorts because he already had a lot of hair in his legs, and he was so embarrassed with those hairs, and all the other friends didn't have hair. And like I was saying, we cannot underestimate the problem. So, they go through changes in their body that can bring a lot of concern. To us, they mean nothing. To them, it means the world. And he went to gym all of that year wearing pants. He wouldn't wear shorts. And I said, you don't know how lucky you are, because all of a sudden you are a grown-up. And other children, sometimes they go to a delayed process and they are much more worried. But it's always something that comes in the head of teenagers. So this is an example. Again, Emmanuel presented to us lack of faith responsible for almost the total number of suicides. When we do not have an understanding, spiritual, religious understanding, we are much more prone to contemplate the idea of suicide. So there are studies that show to us that people that attend religious services are generally believed to exhibit much lower rates of suicide, 4 times less likely to commit suicide. So can you imagine if we make now, math about it, multiplication. Normally people go to church once a week. We go to the Spiritist Center 2, 3 times, 4 times a week, times 4 times. How much more protected we are because we have actually more support, more understanding, more time to meditate about other things of life. So people who are depressed are among the most likely to commit suicide and less likely to attend church. I'm sure that it may happen to you when for all here that are Spiritists. We all know how to do our gospel at home, I hope. We go to the center, we take the passes, and we pray. But there are times in our lives when we are going through a very difficult situation that it seems that we cannot pray for ourselves. We have to ask others to pray for us, and we feel like, no, I'm so depressed, it's so bad today, I do not even have the energy to go to the Spiritist Center. It's exactly when we have to go. It's exactly when we have to pray. So when we see that in ourselves is when we really have to force ourselves to do something about in order to prevent any incident that may happen. The lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual community, and this is the politically correct way of presenting the community to us, has one of the highest suicide rates of any group in society. Why? Because they are criticized in church. They are not accepted in church. And this is one thing that we learn also in Spiritist. that we are not going to judge our brothers and sisters. Regardless of race, religion, sexual options, they are in the process, a spiritual process like anybody else. So in terms of Spiritism, it's a very inclusive form of religion, philosophy, and doctrine that try actually to include and to make everyone welcome. But unfortunately, this is not what we find in other religious or philosophical communities. And so, not having this opportunity, not having these possibilities, they will be at much greater risk. So, and at the same time, when we go, the same way when we come to the Spiritist Center, it's so good to see familiar faces, so good to see people that share the same ideas, the same aspirations that we have. We somehow find comfort. We find people that truly will be interested in helping us, in assisting us in our problems. But one of the things that is mostly important for us to understand, why should I not attempt against my life, is to understand the aim of reincarnation. Why do we reincarnate? Mara presented the situation very well for us. That we reincarnate basically to have an opportunity, to go through an educational process. This educational process means being in contact with different situations in life, with different challenges that can come in a very beautiful package. It can be, having everything in the world, materially speaking, that others are going to envy you because you have all of that. But to understand that when we have all of that, it still has to serve a purpose. It still has to serve a purpose for humanity and for ourselves in terms of educational process is very important. So we understand that through several existences, we will be having this opportunity of growth. That life, and each incarnation that we have, will give us exactly the challenges, will present situations that we'll need to actually be able to conquer light through our spirits. So this is the base of incarnation: attaining perfection, process of purification, opportunity to fulfill a mission. We all have missions to fulfill. We all have an important role on this earth to fulfill. Be it in our family, to be the person that among all the turmoil that is happening around is going to be, the safe port, the safe guide to hold it all together and to guide and to give, consolation and explanations about everything. We all have an important mission to fulfill in our life, if not only for, accomplishing and getting our own spiritual growth. So, of course, in terms of reincarnation, we remember and we know that life never ends. It's a never-flowing source, and death is only the artful effect of an illusion. Those are words of André Luiz. For those who haven't had the opportunity of reading the book Nosso Lar or watching the movie Nosso Lar Astral City, you will see that André Luiz, the spirit of André Luiz, when he died, he had no clue about the afterlife. And he was there, like, many of us, in other incarnations, we return to the spiritual world clueless about our existence, our spiritual existence. So, when we understand that today we are incarnate in process of evolution, we are going to be able to deal much better with our physical existences. Especially because, like they say, one incarnation is not much considering eternity. I know that it's, when we talk in theory, it's easy, but when we think about in practical lives, like when we are going through a difficulty in our lives, it's very difficult for us to go through that. But we have to be sure that it serves a purpose. Like we were saying here before, that God is not against us. God is always for us. It never punishes us. It always gives opportunity for us to grow, to make amends, and to face situations that will propitiate us to go through that. But of course, there are times that we may reach the point of despair. Being a spiritist, having a spiritual vision of life, will always take us to the right place, which is prayer. We always have to resort to prayer to use this possibility in our favor. Mara found a wonderful way of talking to Maria de Nazaré. Normally, Mara, I don't talk to Maria, not even to Jesus. I say that I like to go straight to the boss. I go and I talk to God. Then I say, well, now it's up to you. You can designate whoever you think is fit to solve my problem. So I always pray to God and thank God. But after your conversation, your talk here today, I think I'm going to talk to Maria a little more. Because she's a woman, she understands. If not only for that, she understands me better. Especially when we are talking about things concerning our children. And I have a teenager at home, so you can only imagine how hard it is. Maria is going to be a best goal. Thank you. Prayer always. So, suicide is not a way out of physical suffering. Unfortunately, when we resort to suicide, we will see that it's just an unsuccessful escape. We will leave our physical body, but we are spirits, we are eternal. So, there is no death. There is the death of this physical body here that, like a garment, I just hang in my closet and it stays there. Well, this one is going to disappear in the nature, or cremation. It's still in nature, but I continue living with the aggravation of knowing that I shouldn't have committed this. That I should have not resort to something that would only worsen my situation. Understanding how hard it must be for the one that committed suicide in the afterlife, we also think that it's only at this point that they will see the impact that they have caused in the lives of their loved ones. So, if only for that, we should actually start thinking more about our family members, about those that loved ones, and how we should try not to disappoint them. Those are situations that for the spirit is going to be of a reason for a huge regret, because they were not thinking about that. They were not thinking about the pain they were going to inflict upon those that were left behind. So they wake up in the spirit life, not understanding what they are, completely disappointed because they wanted to kill themselves, to end their thoughts and everything. But then they realize this is not what is going to happen. That we live forever, that life goes on and exists forever and ever. There are communications from spirits that have committed suicide in the book Heaven and Hell, second part, that are very educational for us. And it would be very good for us to look at that in the book, Those Left Behind, we have listed some of them as well, for us just to see how the spirits actually regretted it. Of course, once we have committed such an atrocious action against the law of God and against ourselves, our very spirit, our spirit, is going to present lesions in it. We are going to be, because of our regrets, not because God has sent us there or has punished us to go to regions of, despair and not gnashing of teeth and crying. But because we ourselves, our guilt will not allow us to energetically be able to be in a different place in the spirit realm. So, some of the spirits are even going to see the decomposition of their body. They will see, the majority of them will see how, what kind of error they have committed against themselves. And of course, in future reincarnations, we are going to be seeing, reflect in our physical body, the lesions that we have provoked in our body with an act of suicide. This law of cause and effect is never punishment of God. So we are going to have like a dent, a mark in our spirit, in our perispirit, spirit, that can only be fixed after we go through the difficulties that we ourselves have provoked to ourselves, and in time we'll make amends, we'll reflect about it, and try not to go through the same pathway again. There is a documentary from this man, Eric Steele, that he made a documentary about the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge seems to be the #1 preferable spot for people to commit suicide. They reinforced the safety of the bridge. They have like patrols that go back and forth just to help in the sense, but sometimes they cannot prevent all of them, a lot of people that go there to try to commit suicide. And he made this documentary talking about this 24 known suicides and to the family of them. But one of them is very intriguing because he was able to talk to a man that had jumped from the bridge and had survived it. And so the man tells the following: when he jumped, immediately he regretted his action. What can you do, right? You're on the way down the Golden Gate Bridge. But he said that perhaps because of this reaction and regretting his actions, instead of hitting the water with his head, he managed to somehow get into the water with his feet first. And of course, the impact of the water, he broke most of the bones that he had in his body. But while he was there, a seal came and saved him. So he was saved by a seal. And that's why he could tell the story. And we were talking about animals as well. Isn't that an amazing story? I mean, divine providence. Divine providence. He couldn't move. He was so broken. And to have the possibility of telling us what happened when he was in the way of committing suicide. We know that there are two ways of committing suicide: direct one, that is the premeditated, and the indirect one. So premeditated itself says everything. Indirect one is when we have a burst of passion, like you just got terrible news and without thinking, you do something stupid, silly, Which one is guiltier? Of course, it depends on the level of consciousness that we will have. If there is no premeditation, it is going to have extenuating things that are going to be taken into consideration in the case of suicide. But there is also what is classified as unconscious suicide, which is the best choices that we bring to our lives in terms of, nourishment, addictions, lack of sleep, everything that we can do that will harm our physical body, that we consider what is unconscious suicide. And this is what actually the spirit André tells us in the book Nosso Lar, when he says that he was there in the lower zones and the spirit would come to him and say that he was a suicidal fool, and he would say, I was not a suicide, I died out of, a cancer, actually. And only later on in Nosso Lar is when he realized that he actually provoked that cancer with the life, the careless life that he used to lead. So he should be able to live longer on earth if he was not committing such aggressions to his physical body. Near-death experience also brings us some reports about people that have attempted suicide, going through the tunnel, and coming back and telling us that actually they didn't have such a pleasant experience. So we see that 5% of the US adult population already had a near-death experience. It's a lot, right? And so, Dr. Raymond Moody, previous. He has some books that tell us about those experiences and some reports about the attempted suicide. And so they say that the report of those that have attempted suicide is not exactly the one that I went to a tunnel. I saw familiar faces, I saw the light, but it was something much more disturbing that we as spiritists understand well, because the way they have placed themselves in regions of despair, in problems sometimes with obsessors as well. So in regret, guilty, all of them that do not allow them to have experiences that are not unpleasant. In terms of extreme sports and suicide, is something that we have to think about as well. We have started this talk explaining how important life is to us, and that we should treasure each and every second of our lives, regardless of what happens to our lives, what kind of situation we had in the past, we have today, we are going to have in the future. But trying to get advantage of all of that and to really learn from the lessons life are bringing to us. So, but there are people that they think that they can play with their lives. And the question is, are they committing suicide? What do you think?
Yeah, the brain freeze.
Well, remember that we say everything goes with the intention. If they have the intention, they are doing that because somehow they say, I do not have the courage of killing myself, I'm going to do those crazy stuff, and there maybe, that will take over and we'll do something about it. Or if they are just doing that because they are foolish and, and not consider life that much. So it's not considered to be a suicide if there is no intention. But of course, death can result from that. And the regret, the guilty, the situation is going to be very similar to those that have committed suicide. Because they are in their prime, many of times when they die as a result of such actions. And so their body is full of energy, vital fluid. And so to dissipate all of that is very complicated. And so we have here one doctor that says, humans are the only creatures foolish enough to deliberately take risks and expose themselves to mortal danger. Can you imagine? Not even an animal do that. If they see, like, a little bunny see, a lion passing by, he's going to hide. He's not going to go there and, I'm going to see if you can catch me. No, just for the thrill of it. They are going to hide. They are going to try to not to expose them to risk. And we do the opposite. So, this is an article that was published in this New York World, the Lamp, September 1894. But very interesting, I thought, about for the purpose of our study. Suicide is not death. To teach suicide is a sin, for it leads some to commit it. To prohibit it without reason is useless, for our minds must have reasons for doing or not doing. But give people the key to their own natures. Show them how law governs both here and beyond the grave, and their good sense will do the rest. So again, what we see is that we have actually to start looking at ourselves beyond our physical eyes, our physical appearance, and start looking at us as an eternal, immortal spirit that we are, using this body, this incarnation, to accomplish an educational process, to accomplish the fulfillment of tasks and missions that we have brought to this incarnation. But we are not that. We are so much more. And actually, God gives us so many opportunities, new opportunities, for us to be able to go through this process and to learn and to start looking at ourselves as we are. At least, if we could somehow manage to bring balance to our lives today, it would be great already. Balance in the sense that, yes, we are material, we live in the material world, we have material needs that need to be addressed, but we are also spirits. So I also need to address the necessities of my spirit, to understand that I have to work for this balance, for the knowledge, understanding myself as an eternal being. So in this case, balance would actually be the key for us in terms of our behavior in this life. So if we could bring that to our lives, if we could find the time to pray. Sometimes people come to us and say, oh, please pray for me, I don't have the time to pray. Or your prayers are much more effective than mine. Do you know why our prayers are more effective than theirs? Because we pray and you don't pray. Pure and simple, if you don't pray, of course, what efficacy can you have out of it? We pray the same to Maria, to God, to Jesus, but we pray the same. So we have to find a way, to find moments that we can address our spiritual needs. And when the torment, the tempest comes, the hurricane enters our home, we are going to be much stronger and capable of dealing with those problems, and afterwards be actually grateful and proud of ourselves because we have overcome that. Something that seemed horrible today, tomorrow when it's over, you look back and you say, oh my God, I don't even know how I survived it. It's very much like we have that message from the footprints in the sand. when there's this man looking at his life, and his life is printed in the footprints in the sand, and he sees all the time his set of footprints and the set of Jesus' footprints, but there are some parts that there is just one, and then he realized that those parts where there was just one footprint in the sand was when he actually lived like, in a hurricane phase. And then he questioned Jesus, where were you? All the other time you were with me, and exactly at those moments that I needed you more, you were not with me. And Jesus said, well, you see just one because those were mine. I was carrying you during this time. So we have to be sure, no matter how hard it seems to be, how difficult it is, for all of us, because we are in a world of trials and tumults, that we are not alone, that we have help, that we have the good spirits, our guardian angel, Maria, Jesus, God, everyone helping us in this process. So if we keep ourselves, if we can maintain this light, this flickering flame, it's still lighted in our hearts with the certitude that we are not alone, and that we can ask for their help, and that we are going to receive their help, we are going actually to be able to overcome those turmoils, those challenges that we have in our lives, and go ahead and continue much stronger in a much better position. My time is over, but I'm going to put to you one of these poems that I received through psychography for the book, and I'm reading that. My son, once you departed, my tears have never ceased. My heart fell apart, my still eyes lost in the horizon. It was your choice to leave us behind, to depart without a kiss, not giving us a chance to make you change your mind, thus leaving us in a desert without bliss. Oh, my dear one, my life will never be the same. Where did I fail? Why was I not able to support you and to give you strength to withstand the struggles of life? Oh, flesh of my flesh, rebellious spirit, I wish you could have come to me more often, to open up your heart and to find shelter in my love. Now, my son, my thoughts are only for you. My life is your life, my prayer a single cry of help, so that the merciful Creator may give us the chance to trail the same path again. I will look after you forever. I will assist you like never before. But this time, I will not lose you to the dark shadows of despair. God is love. God is forgiving. My love accompanies you now and forever.